Since the start of the conflict, more than 13,000 Russian servicemen have died in Ukraine, according to government records. They have been ordered to mobilize 924 of them. According to Info, this information was discovered after an inquiry by the BBC Radio's Russian service, Mediazona, and a group of volunteers. Journalists claim that inmates and mobilized volunteers account for the majority of deaths in the past 3 months. It has been reported that 500 more Russians have killed in Ukraine throughout the past week alone. From open sources, journalists learned about the death of 924 mobilized Russians. This number includes 99 servicemen who were killed during the shelling of Makevka in the Russian-occupied part of the Donetsk region of Ukraine on January 1. Russia's defense ministry has admitted that 89 Russians were killed by artillery fire in Makevka, the highest single casualty known by Russia since the start of the war. Journalists studying the dynamics of losses of the Russian army for 11 months came to the conclusion that the main part of those who died now were volunteers, mercenaries of the Wagner PMC, including prisoners, and those who were mobilized. Together, they account for a quarter of the total confirmed losses. In the first phase of the war, Air Force, Marine Corps, GRU Special Forces, i.e., professional and well-trained units, suffered the biggest losses. Of the more than 13,000 Russian soldiers who died in Ukraine, 1,665, that is, 15%, were officers. Among them are 4 generals and 54 colonels. The journalists emphasize that when calculating the losses, they use only open sources, confirmed information from the Russian mass media and regional authorities, as well as reports from local residents, so the real death toll may be several times higher. According to the most conservative estimates of the monitoring authors, Russia could lose more than 26,000 people during the occupation of Ukraine. Russia's total irretrievable losses may be at least 117,000. US and other Western officials estimate that the number of Russian soldiers killed and wounded in Ukraine is approaching 200,000. This was reported by the New York Times. The newspaper writes that Russian losses have doubled in the last 3 months of the war. According to the publication's sources, hundreds of Russian servicemen are killed or wounded every day in the Bakhmut and Soledar regions of the Donetsk region of Ukraine, where the fiercest battles are taking place. US officials say this is due to Russia sending poorly trained conscripts and ex-prisoners to the front lines. The New York Times writes that Ukraine's losses in Bakhmut can be compared with Russia's losses. The publication refers to the assessment of Mark Milley, the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the U.S. Armed Forces, regarding the losses in Ukraine as a whole, declared in November 2022 that both sides of the conflict lost more than 100,000 people.